Hello, friends. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate that you're here. I appreciate that you've decided to spend some time with my voice inside your head. And I hope that wherever you are in this world, you are staying safe, wearing a mask, and taking care of those around you. A couple of things that I know you guys know, but I like to remember. I like to remember myself. As I'm sure you know, Black Lives Matter. There is no other acceptable position other than that. You need to be wearing a mask if you are not in your house or in your apartment. And if we are ever going to get back to the pre-pandemic times, which even the New York Times relatively recently referred to as the before times, we're going to need to wear a mask, maintain social distancing, even if in your particular location things are starting to slowly open up. In New York City, where I live, we just entered phase 2, so I'm cautiously optimistic that things are trending in the right direction, but it relies on the newly established social contract of wearing a mask and only and maintaining social distancing. That's how this is going to continue to improve until a vaccine is available. And what a day that will be. I'm looking forward to it because even though I've continued to maintain some semblance of connection and as well as economic comfort during this time, there are certain things that I know I'm never going to want to take for granted ever again, even if the way that they happen changes slightly. And one of those things is being on stage. I greatly look forward to when my band Bright Ugly is able to play our first couple shows, and I'm looking forward to being able to get on stage and tell jokes into a microphone at some point. It's starting to happen a little bit around New York City. If I'm at, and it's one of those situations where if I was asked, I would do it. But I'm not asking because I still don't want to I guess be outside if I don't have to. That's still kind of where my mindset is. And so I'm still, as long as need be, I'm happy to continue to make these podcasts for you fine people as you are to listen to them. So thank you guys for being here. This is a great music show today. My guest on the show today is a musician, Charlie Bowen. He's vocals and guitar for the Richmond, Virginia punk band Sleave. That is Sleave. And how he came to be on the show is kind of interesting. And I told him this, so I don't feel like I'm speaking out of turn. This was sort of a milestone for me, and this is the first guest that I have spoken to because they reached out to me, and I enjoyed their work. I'm shameful to say I hadn't heard of Sleeve before Charlie reached out to me, but I listened to their record, which is available on Bandcamp and Spotify. I'll have links for it in the description, but their debut is called Don't Expect Anything, and it's a spectacular alternative punk rock kind of record. It blends post-hardcore influences like you're in the vein of Fugazi and bands and similar bands, and then the second half is very much in that heartland rock meets punk rock style that the Menzingers or the Gaslight Anthem. And how Charlie heard about the show was he heard my interview with Tom May of the Menzingers from I guess back in March or April now, and I enjoyed the record and I wanted to chat with him. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to talk extensively about really the Richmond, Virginia music scene, which I was not aware had such a kick-ass scene despite living in Maryland for so much of my life and it being relatively close to Virginia. So as soon as shows are able to happen again, my band's I'm going to want to get the band on the road so we can do some shows in Richmond. So if you guys, so this is going to be, this is a fun one. I'm looking forward to sharing this interview with you guys. If you enjoyed this and know a friend who might be interested in this show as well, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. And as I said earlier, you can listen to Sleeve on Bandcamp and on Spotify. The band, it is spelled Sleave. The new full length from them is called, gonna get this, is called Don't Expect Anything. And it's a really great record, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this interview. So again, wherever you get your podcasts, I have over 160 other episodes for you to enjoy. And let's get to my chat with Charlie Bowen, vocals and guitar for Sleave. I want to thank you for reaching out, Charlie, because, and not to get too overly sentimental, but you're the first person that like reached out to me and said, I'm a fan of your podcast, that I didn't know personally. So that meant a lot to hear that from you, dude.
No kidding, man. Really?
Yeah. Like I'm sure you might be familiar with this feeling, like being a creative person as well. Sometimes you're just kind of like shouting into the void and just kind of putting stuff out there and wondering if it reaches anybody. Like, I know I have listeners, but I so rarely hear from them. So it was super exciting to hear from somebody who like listened and enjoyed what I do. It was it was rewarding to hear that coming from you.
Yeah, I think exactly when someone's not like right in front of you, how are you to know? And then there's people, if you think about it, especially even if your audience gets to like, if you have 100 listeners or even 50, like you have people experiencing your voice for hours and hours. So I think, yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man. Of course, the way I found you was basically I'm a nut, and we'll get into it. But
Mm-hmm.
but Menzingers are my favorite band, and I listen to tons of music podcasts. I've worked in a lot of jobs where I could just have headphones in,
Mm-hmm.
especially like in the past few years. And every time I see one of their names pop up somewhere, I just kind of search sometimes for their names because I just love hearing about their songs and their process. And I was like, oh, here's one I haven't heard. And usually it's Tom because it's always Tom. I don't know why no one else from that band talks to anyone, but yeah,
Yeah, I
man, I
don't
listened
know.
to it. I was like, this is great. This guy's asking all the right questions. So I just wanted to reach out and say that I appreciated it, man.
Dude, that means so much to hear you say that, and especially because I'm sure you've given interviews being in a band. I feel like I'm always trying to try to ask questions that I feel like bands haven't been asked 100 times. Because I'm sure if you go on YouTube and find like whatever publication is talking to the band when they're in towns, like bands don't really know where their ideas come from or have tons of specific pre-show rituals. I That's not really a thing, I think, that I've experienced.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people they want to do is they want to like I don't know if they think their audience wants the same questions over and over again or something, or they're doing it to appease someone higher up kind of on the ladder at their company or whatever. But it's always the same questions. And I think that's why bands and people hate doing interviews so much is because they know specifically that that person's not a fan of the band. Like that person probably hasn't heard their record.
Right.
They don't give a shit. They're just kind of like there because someone told them to be there. And I get that. I'm in a small band, and even with the few interviews I've done, like it's been a lot of the same questions.
Oh no, totally. Well, I feel very fortunate to be interviewing you now, because I feel like Sleave. I'm talking to you right before Sleave becomes a major figure in the DIY and the punk rock scene, because your new record, I listened to it and I really enjoyed it, dude. To me, it kind of, and we're gonna get into it also. Like the second half, like, and perfectly encapsulates like a lot of everything I like when it comes to music, like that sort of like hard on your sleeve, like passionate kind of punk rock energy. And then the first half, um, I heard lots of like kind of like Fugazi and like post kind of post hardcore influences, like that sort of like that like shouting at everything. I sort of really, the vibe of it really spoke to me.
Damn, dude. Well, thank you first of all so much for saying that. Yeah, and so occasionally what I do is and again, I listen to tons of music podcasts, and I've listened to um, quite a few of your podcasts too. And I just thought the kind of people you had on, like I know you had Ray Harkins on at one point, and like his
Mm-hmm.
podcast is, I listen to every single episode of that podcast. you know, and you've had, like Frank Turner on. That's so cool. And so I thought maybe this guy might like my music because I think, and again, I don't know if we're on some sort of, you know, we're at some sort of breaking point, but I don't know about that. I would like to think that's possible, but I think that I just thought you would probably like it because people our age, kind of younger people,
Mm-hmm.
that's not really the market right now. Um,
Yeah.
even though we have a lot of young fans, but um, I was like, oh, he seems like the right age group. He's interviewing the right bands. He might be into it. So I'm glad you are, man. And yeah, if anyone wants to know, I just reached out and said, hey, I think you'd like the record. And then my drummer, hit me up on Instagram, and I don't really use Instagram except to send,
Mm-hmm.
little kind of notes like that. And he came to me and he said, hey man, this guy really likes the record. I said, oh, that's great. Like, yeah, maybe he listened to it. No, he wants you to be a guest. And I was like, what? So I don't know the size of your podcast or anything, man, but I mean, to me, it's a big deal and a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Dude, warms my heart to hear you say that. And anybody listening to this uh who's in like a band, like a punk rock band or any kind of band similar to the Menzingers, that's the code. If you message me and send me your record and I like it, I'll probably want to talk to you because that's, I mean, I love kind of having these kind of conversations because even though like my band is like we still didn't even get to play our first couple shows because of the pandemic, like I still feel, and what I love having about these conversations is that I have an understanding, at least a little bit of what it's like, of the life and the process. So, and especially because I feel like you're from the Virginia area, and I grew up in the suburbs of Maryland, so I feel like we have some common ground, even though we've like never met.
And this is actually something I was going to bring up. I've listened to a few episodes. Were you like a theater kid in high school, or did
Oh
you
yeah,
like build sets, or what was your role?
I well, I was very fortunate in that the high school I went to Patuxent High School in Calvert County in southern Maryland. So like it's probably about an hour south on from DC. So the guy who was running the theater department at my high school when I was there is a guy named Derek Anderson, who I was talking to a friend from back in the day, and we even get a little nervous like saying his first name. But I was
Oh,
really fortunate in that he believed in a kind of a well-rounded education. Like we should all actually do as much as possible, and everybody should do at least a little bit of everything. So I was not only building sets, like I was like cutting wood with a saw, but I was acting in the plays also. So I was fortunate to be able to have the experience from both sides. But yeah, I was 100%. I was 100% a hardcore theater kid, dude.
yeah, and I have the garage band up because I'm recording right now, and I have these pictures up here of me from high school too. But we probably would have been best friends then, dude, because like I was always playing in bands, always playing guitar. I had that kind of classic, high school musical moment where
Uh huh.
the sports just started to become a kind of a slog to me, and I went and became this, person who was, doing theater after school every day, Saturday, Sunday, coming in and helping build the sets. I just like couldn't get enough of it, so I got to be in a lot of shows too. Um, eventually, of course, that waned, and I kind of chose the band side of things, but
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much just because I could do it myself. It always seems like you just have to impress somebody when you're doing theater. And I know there's a lot of kind of, niche things going on, especially where you are. But I was like, well, I can play my guitar in my room to nobody and write a song. So
Yeah.
it just became more prominent for me. But there was a time in high school where I was like seriously considering trying to do theater, you know, afterwards.
Oh yeah, that, and I went to college for it also. That what you said just now, we absolutely would have been like the best of friends in high school, and I can tell that I feel like you would have integrated in my friend group really well because that's what I did. I would come in on Saturdays to work on building the set. It was the first time, and this is why I think like the arts in high school are so important. Even if it doesn't become like your full time career later on, it needs to be there so that kids can find their thing. Because for me, it was a total revelation. Before, I was like kind of a lonely gamer kid who would just kind of go to school, go home, and didn't have a ton of other interaction. But when I found theater specifically, that was the first thing I was so excited to like stay after school and rehearse and work on stuff and come in on the weekends and work and get like sweaty and out of breath and just be excited to like be a part of the process. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and Saturday was kind of that flex day where like cast members would come in, maybe you
Mm-hmm.
had some extra work, and then you would have the Hell Week or whatever right before a dress rehearsal. And our director, at least, would just, he would go off on you. It was expected that, he would go off during Hell Week, and it scared a lot of people away. But
Yep.
but he was great. And yeah, when I look back at high school, I mean, that's the main thing I look back on is like, damn, I'm so happy I did that. That and like summer camp are like my childhood kind of memories that I go back to and look at fondly. And yeah, we're getting old, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so. How old are you? Because you're probably younger than me. I'm 34.
So so I am older than most people think. I'm 27.
Okay.
But
Still not that old.
yeah, the rest of my band are I don't want to go talking about them necessarily, but the rest of them they're barely drinking age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean I'm kind of the oldest in the band, and I was lucky to move to Richmond after school and find a bunch of people who basically like young who I consider young kids, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and play and write songs for me. So I'm happy that I got them. They keep me young.
I know exactly what you mean. When I did On the Impossible Pod, I always assume like everyone's kind of the same age as me, and I always assume I'm very soon going to become the old guy whose pop culture references everyone I talk to is just like, what Oasis? I have no idea what you're talking about. And so like to be able to connect with people who like like the Menzingers or like are excited about kinds of bands that I'm into is exactly. I feel that way. I won't become like the old man yelling at the cloud about like how, music when I was a teenager, that was the real music, man. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, and I mean and a lot of people say this about us, but I mean even the music I like, I'm kind of young for it, I think. I mean, most of the bands I listen to are like, I don't know, 80s and 90s, like you said, punk bands and stuff. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even born, in the 80s. And so, I mean, yeah, and the Menzingers are, I don't know, I guess they found me at kind of the perfect time. And so, 17, 18, I think is when I first heard their music. And that's a good age to start and kind of grow along with them and their discography.
Oh, 100%. So if you don't mind me asking, where did you grow up? Are you from the Richmond area, or you said you moved there after school?
Yeah, so I'm from Virginia. I'm from I don't know how familiar you are with Virginia. You might be kind of if you're from Maryland, but maybe not. I'm from Hampton and Norfolk. They're two towns kind of right outside Virginia Beach. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, yes, I'm familiar with that area very well.
Yeah, so that's where I grew up was in Hampton. Spent kind of like my very young childhood in Norfolk. Moved to Hampton. That's where I went, to high school and everything. And then I just moved to Richmond after college because I wanted to start a band,
Mm-hmm. And
basically.
right on. So there's like a this is also what I'm learning about punk rock and because for the longest time I think it has been beating my head New York or Los Angeles are the two places, but really like with the way in the entertainment business is kind of all over the place now. Like there are these like little like scenes that pop up in all of these cool cities and places I would have never thought of. So there's like, what's the music scene like in Richmond?
Well, before COVID, it was pretty excellent. I mean, obviously, hopefully at some
Totally.
point soon we'll get back to gigging or whatever. But I mean, that's the main reason I moved here. You know, Virginia Beach, you know, they've got a hardcore scene and they've got some stuff going on, but that whole area down there is really kind of separated from each other, and it's just like a major driving culture, and it's there's so much traffic, and people are just kind of darting and commuting between the seven cities which are down there, and so it just makes kind of for like a I don't know, a very kind of disparate place
Sure.
where the identity is not really strong. But Richmond, I mean, you can ride your bike everywhere. Um, you know, every person is like a young art student, or they're, you know, just working in the service industry, trying to make it with their band or their blog or something. So it's great. I mean, there's a really good hardcore scene here. Um, there's a really good kind of pop punk emo scene, which I guess I would say Sleeve is kind of tied to. Um, but that's why I moved here. I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to gig down in Hampton and stuff, you know, but
Right.
Richmond, I mean, we can play a show every week, whether it's like a house show or at a club or something. So it's great, and it's a great city that really embraces heavy music. You know, the metal scene here is really big. I don't know anything about it, but I just, you know, I know
Mm-hmm.
it's huge with bands like Guar, Lamb of God. You know, obviously Avail is from Richmond, so we've got a good history, man. I mean, I think if I could, you know, rub the lamp and make a wish, I think Sleeve would have probably done a lot better in the '90s. But
Uh-huh.
I mean, the scene is healthy right now, and we're pretty happy with it.
That's really cool to hear. It kind of makes me think of, when Tom and I were talking about the way that the housing crisis kind of created this great thriving DIY scene in Philadelphia. That's really exciting. That's really exciting here. I love, and I don't know if you feel this way. I feel like heavy music, especially in like really kind of impassioned music, it kind of thrives in those kinds of situations. I feel like it could, because people are just kind of looking for an outlet a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, when you come here, all it and it just kind of fits the mold here. When you come here, there's just everyone is just covered in tattoos. Everyone works in like a coffee shop. I mean, it's the most hipster fucking place I've ever been to in my life, man. Like I don't think people realize how kind of like absurdly, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but yeah,
It kind of makes me think of like Williamsburg here in Brooklyn. Williamsburg is like considered like
right,
ground
yep.
zero, and Bushwick also. My uh, our rehearsal space is in Bushwick, which is because Williamsburg got expensive, so now Bushwick is like now the cool, like edgy place where exactly what you're saying. Like everyone's got tons of tattoos. There's lots of everyone's like a bartender or like a barbecue pit master, something like something like that. Crafts,
Right. Yeah,
and
and
then they're all in bands.
because you can live here. I mean, it doesn't cost too much to live here. I mean, for where I am and what I have, I mean, the only thing I hate about this city is how hot it is. It's just
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I feel like it's just the hottest place on the planet. And it's not obviously, but I don't do well with heat. But I mean, for the price, I really couldn't live anywhere better, honestly. So yeah, two thumbs up to Richmond. If anyone comes down here, I'll take you to a house show or something. But I
Awesome.
remember in high school, man, it was like, oh man, yeah, let's go play this show here on the boardwalk in Virginia Beach, and then maybe one day we could go to Richmond, like drive up there and play a house show with like college kids. That was like the big thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that makes total sense because like I mean, Virginia Beach is cool, and like playing bars, or I guess I'm maybe doing like having to do a cover set somewhere is probably fun. But like getting in with like your people for your kind of thing that's really exciting. Like it makes me think of like the first like put like where I'm from. There was like maybe five punk there was like five bands. There was like a like a rap rock kind of band that are still around down there, and there was like a couple of pop punk bands. So like the first time I got to go to like a show at like an armory or like the community center was so exciting. Like because you're finding your tribe kind of.
Right. And we did not. I mean, Hampton, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, we could go to those shows, but we had to drive, in traffic, for 1 hour, 2 hours just to get to the club or something. And
Yeah,
so it just was kind of not, I mean, I didn't grow up like a hardcore kid or a punk kid or anything. I just kind of went to shows when they came up and just listened to whatever I listened to. And, um, Richmond is kind of where that identity really started to thrive for me. Um, and just in like the music I was creating too.
totally. Can you tell me the first record that kind of blew your mind when it comes to rock, like heavy guitar music or rock music?
Yeah, when I heard that riff in Aqualung by Jethro Tull, you know that song?
Uh huh. Da na 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 na. Yep.
Dude. So I mean, yeah, I mean, and I think Tom has talked about this, so many people talk about this, but at least in our generation, the first music you're hearing is your parents bought a CD and they're playing it in the car, or you're listening to the radio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad, he's a baby boomer. He's listening to the classic rock station or whatever. And I was this kind of sports kid, and I was just like baseball obsessive. I played baseball year round, and I was
Uh
trying
huh.
out for all these teams and doing all this. But then, on the drive to and from the game, we got to listen to the Fox, which was the classic rock station.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember where kind of the switch happened, but I was like, I want to get a guitar. I want to learn how to play that song. Like, how cool would that be if I could play? Yeah, darn,
Uh huh.
exactly. I mean, and so I think that's probably where it started. That was definitely the first song in that band, and then it went out from there. Classic rock, then into I don't know, how we were as kids, like new metal,
Yeah,
maybe.
I was definitely a product of the new metal era because like whatever I could get. So like it started with I remember kind of cycling through like I had several different musical identities and they would kind of go around of what kind of fan I was and it would start everything for me started with Enema of the State by Blink-182. Like that's the album that made me want to pick up a guitar or play music. So pop punk was very important and then I was really into like Creed and Stained and like heavy kind of like bounce riffs like dan and 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 screaming. And then I went through like a weird horrorcore. I had like a horrorcore rap phase for a little while because
Oh,
I've interviewed several rappers. So I would never say I was a juggalo, but I was definitely probably juggalo adjacent for a little while. Um,
Juggalo adjacent. You got to put that on your LinkedIn profile.
exactly. Like I was just so excited to find this world because my parents' music growing up, some of it resonated, but not all of it. I remember when I was a kid being really into Don McLean. Like I loved American Pie, and my dad played that a
Right.
lot. Um, I laughed at him when he played me "Cat Scratch Fever" by Ted Nugent. I thought that song was just ridiculous, even before I knew Nugent sucked. Um, and and then my mom was really into like classic Motown, so like uh, Smokey Robinson, all of the great everybody that was on Motown, like all the bands you'd hear on the Big Chill soundtrack. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I haven't, but funny about, and I love that Motown stuff too, but funny about that, my mom, whenever that movie comes up, my mom has this story. She like spent like a weekend in that house, just like they did in the movie,
In that same house?
in the house that they filmed the movie. I can't remember the details, but she had like a friend who lived there or knew somebody, and her college friends one weekend when they were young, they were in college,
Mm-hmm.
and they went and got to stay in the house for some reason. But she always brings that up, and I have like a T-shirt and everything. It's very strange, but kind of a cool story. I have not seen the movie though.
It's a pretty good movie. I mean, it was old by my standards when I was a kid, but it's definitely I think it definitely resonates as far as like an enjoyable ensemble comedy that kind of at the core of it is like really dark. But like that was all like that movie I think was probably is maybe and someone's going to correct me, but that it was considered odd that Motown was the majority of the soundtrack for that because that would have been considered like the music of a generation before when that movie was new. But that's crazy that you have your mom stayed at that house. That's wild. And what did you go to school for?
Just the same thing that everybody in my position does, English.
English, right on.
Yeah.
It is good for it is good to know English for a field in for working in creativity. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we'll see where it goes. But right now, I have a job that is totally not tied to anything having to do with English. It's like I work operations at
Hmm.
I guess like a tech company, and it's actually great. But in no way did an English degree help me help me get that job. You know.
No, totally. And when did you start playing? And you play guitar in the band,
Yes. So for a while we were just a three piece. So I was doing everything. We have four people now, but yeah, I play guitar and I do, the vocals and everything.
right on. And so that was probably like when you're a teenager that started.
Oh, playing guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny that you bring up, you know, and of course I listen to your podcast, so I know you're a big Blink-182 fan, but
Hmm.
even before I was listening to like all those classic rock bands, I remember some kid way older than me. I was probably, God, 7 or 8 years old. Someone gave me a mixtape and it had like Blink 182, Green Day, NoFX, Less Than Jake. And it's funny how I listen to music now that I listened to when I was seven rather than, in middle school or high school, more so, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but it's funny because that was right when Take Off Your Pants and Jacket came out.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember thinking, like, an 8-year-old kid listening to a song about if we're fucked up, you're to blame, that first song on the record.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking like, whoa, this is so edgy. This is so cool. I remember thinking, I can't show my parents that I have this. So I
Uh-huh.
kept it on my Walkman, you know, little CD player thing going to school. But I thought I found this secret. I thought I found this world that the rest of the world kind of wasn't clued into. Of course they were because they were on, what were they on, like Warner Brothers or something. But that was a
Yeah, I
fun
think they were on
time.
MCA for that album still.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as guitar, I started playing, yeah, I think 13. My parents got me, a cheap acoustic guitar, and I kind of just never stopped playing. And then they got me an electric guitar, and then they got me an amp, and yeah, but that's the only one I've played. I can play a little bit of piano, but guitar is definitely the one I stick with, and that's the one that I don't know. I guess that's the one that I would play in any band unless they needed a bass player and I really wanted to be in the band.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. If you start off playing guitar, anyone who listens is it behooves you to also be able to like chug along on a root note because bass players are in short supply. Not as short as drummers, but uh, vitally important. That's killer, man. Yeah, I probably started. Let's see. I probably started around the same time. The similarities between us are endless, Charles. I'm digging this. Um, and so you move after school. You move to Richmond with the goal of starting a band. And how does Sleeve start?
Well, it takes a while because, as you just said, finding a drummer is fucking impossible.
Yep.
And here's the thing, finding a drummer is not as impossible if you're okay with them being in four other bands.
Yeah, it's polyamorous.
Right, right. Because every drummer is so overbooked. And I had my best friend was going to, VCU, which is kind of a big, public college here in the city.
Hmm.
At the time, still he was still going there, and so he played bass. And I was like, all right, well, I've got a guaranteed bass player. At this time, I was already pretty dead set on making it a punk band. Um,
Yeah.
and even all through college, I was playing in bands with friends and leaving on quite a few weekends to go play shows actually, at other colleges and stuff. But then I was like, all right, fresh start, move to Richmond. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to front this band. I'm going to do the vocals. I'm going to write the songs. And it took a while, but once I found my drummer, it kind of got locked in. He was in, I think, three bands at the time, and they just slowly kind of dropped off. And
Hmm.
now he's all mine.
Excellent. That's you stuck it
It is
out.
excellent.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, man. Because if you have once you have that, you're golden. Because like I always remember like when I was just like learning, teaching myself how to play and how to write songs, I remember thinking, well, when I play with a drummer, it'll feel like real. Um, I've since like seen tons of acts that don't have drums or like some other substitute for it, but like I remember the first time I got to play with a drummer, it was just very exciting. And so the band starts, and then you're just like hitting the like house show and bass and DIY circuit.
Yeah, well, I mean, my drummer and I, we jammed for like months and months before we, because I didn't know anyone in Richmond. But here's the thing, man, and I think this is going to start becoming kind of becoming apparent as, we get older and we start, more of our bands are coming to prominence or whatever, just of our generation.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the first drummer I had, and I think bass player, learned to play the drums on that video game Rock Band. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
I think we were probably in middle school when that came out, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Well, I can play this electronic kit." And so we just got him like another electronic kit that was similar to the Rock Band one, and he just learned to
Mm-hmm.
play drums on that, like in the driveway. Um, and I think that's when everyone wanted to be, an actual rock star. And so I always bring that story up because I think that's fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense to me. I agree with you 100%. Like those games were those games were everywhere, and I think absolutely for a certain generation. I was probably I think I was probably in college when those were really popular, but yeah, because at that time, that I think those were very important to like making guitar and like rock music cool to that generation. Absolutely. And I think that's
Oh,
when it
dude,
became
yeah.
cool. And that's also I think when it became when like knowing how to like to being able to play competently like worked, because like once new metal dropped started to drop off, that's when like Avenged Sevenfold and like being able to like shred or at least do this like metalcore kind of like like palm mute the low E string and then just kind of move around on the A became gnarly.
Yeah, and I think I remember I would go to that kid's house, and there would just be like there was like this stuffy attic room where they had the Guitar Hero or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they would just be up there for hours trying to play Through the Fire and Flames on expert level. That was the thing, right?
Uh huh.
Like if you nailed that, you were the king of the game or whatever. And I always think of that South Park episode where they like become rock stars, but they're just playing Guitar Hero.
Uh huh.
Um,
Totally.
and I still have like old videos. I hope, nobody finds it of us in our driveway. My buddy's got the electronic kit. I'm singing like I don't know, a Radiohead song or something. It's
Mm-hmm.
just terrible. But man, that's what we did. It was so fun.
Oh yeah, dude. Absolutely. Like whatever gets you to doing the thing, I'm all in favor of that kind of stuff. I just because I want more people like doing the thing and making the kind of music like your band makes and like tons of other bands that I listen to. Um, I wanted to ask you. So Sleeve like takes off and you're like hitting the Richmond scene and what were kind of some of the things that worked for you early on as far as like finding shows, because this is something I work on constantly, but also because I'm in a band now, I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think it's like a job interview. Um, it's about who you know, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anyone when I came to Richmond except for my bass player who, and he he was, really into sober living, and so his kind of attachment to the scene, not that it's all based on drugs and alcohol, but if you are sober in college, you're not really going out and doing much,
Right.
you know. So he didn't know anyone, but then when I got my drummer, he was a student there as well. He had already been somehow playing kind of in the house show scene with these other bands. So he got us our first shows, and they were really, I mean, at first they were weird shows. We were playing, with like rappers with laptops and stuff,
Uh huh.
and like psychedelic bands and shit like that. Um, and then eventually we just got invited to play the right show, and there was this whole scene of kids who liked the same music we do. And now, you know, I mean, it gets to a point where you have to turn down way more shows than you accept, you know. So
Yeah.
we got lucky in that sense, I guess. But again, Richmond is just such a busy, particularly house show friendly scene, that it doesn't matter who you are, like your band's going to get a show.
That's cool. I'm glad that that still exists, because when I have musicians on, like I remember uh like, Matthew from Wheatus telling me about this, like the awesome scene in Long Island when he was younger. And I think back to I don't know if you ever got to see any shows at the Record Theater in Towson, Maryland, but I saw so many great shows there, and to finally get a chance to play there with my band in college was spectacular. So just like knowing that these scenes still exist, like every time I see someone on the internet go rock and roll is dead, I'm like, no man, you just got to look harder. Like anything we're finding, you gotta dig for it.
Yeah, and I mean Richmond has, and I don't want to just talk about Richmond the whole time, but we just have everything, and we're really lucky, and a lot of us can live here cheap. And I think probably if you can't make it up to New York, this is the best place on the East Coast if you want to like be a starving artist. I really believe that. Because you don't have to have any money to live here, man. I'm really not kidding.
That's killer, man. If I was like 10 years younger and we were having this conversation, my life might have taken a completely different path. I love where I'm at right now, but dude, as soon as COVID's over and shows can happen again, I'm gonna email you, because I want to. You're really selling me on the scene in your city, man. That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is, and I mean it's kind of, you know, it's kind of aging out, but especially like if you're into hardcore metal, I mean this is a stop for everybody. You know, we're close to the whole Discord scene of DC, um, and I think that brings a lot of people here, people who realize that living in DC kind of sucks, and it's
Hmm.
expensive as shit, and
Yeah.
the parking and traffic is just like unbearable.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to work, you go up there, but if you want to like work and play and maybe work a little less and be a little more creative, I don't know, maybe Richmond's the place for you.
Cool, man. And are you the only guitarist in the band, or are there two guitarists now?
Well, so I was the only guitarist, um, but my whole and that was the thing for and my bass player, my new bass player, recently said this to me, and I hate to say it, but he's right. Um, we started jamming in 2015. The band officially formed in 2016, but the band really didn't start until our record came out in October. Um,
Hmm.
and at that point, our my bass player, the one I mentioned, had left. We got a new one. Um, then we got this other guy to come play bass, and so now that old bass player is playing guitar with me. So now it's two guitar players. But that's why when I wrote the record that came out last year, I wrote two guitar parts. I wrote a lead and a rhythm because
Hmm.
I knew eventually we needed to have two guitar players basically.
Right.
And if we have to go on tour with just one guitar player, I'll make it work. But my intention was always to have two, and now we do.
Awesome. So you can, when you're writing a song, you can, like, you're working. I'm not sure what your process is, but when you're hearing a song, you can hear like a lead melody in your head, and so you like write with that in mind as well.
Yeah, sometimes I can hear it. Sometimes I just have to play the rhythm over and over again and just kind of tool around to see what I like. And then honestly, a lot of stuff we just came up with on the spot in the studio. I think people don't realize how common that is.
Uh huh.
Like writing half the song after you've already laid down kind of like the drums and the bass and stuff. But yeah, just a combination of that. But I knew every song needed to have at least two guitars. Most have more though.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that makes sense, because you want to stack, you want to get like as thick a sound as you can, so you want to like stack the sound. I thought the guitar tones you got on on the record are phenomenal. Like they it kind of, I want to articulate like the kind of sound that it reminds me of, like the same way and I don't mean to directly compare you to the Menzingers, because I think you guys stand out well on your own. But that kind of
Will,
like,
please, you can always compare me to the Menzingers,
well,
man.
good to know, Charlie. I'll keep I'll keep that in mind. The same way, like you, the kind of like the sort of, it's almost like it's punk through like it's punk through like a filter of like Heartland rock is kind of how I took it. Like I don't like that same kind of like, not quite, in a move away from that like high gain like Marshall Stack sound that was really popular in the early
Mhm.
2000s. That sort of like maybe more like Fender overdrive, like kind of a creamier kind of distortion, and like the clean tones I thought were just delish.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, so here's the funny thing about that, and most people don't believe me when I say it, but shout out to Pedro at Audio Verite. He recorded the whole record for us and helped us master it and everything. So shout out to him for nailing those tones. But and I'm sorry for your listeners, we're going to get a little into the guitar weeds here, but we went into it, and our earlier stuff, like our EP and our 7 inch, the guitar is way more grating. It is that sound that you mentioned. It's
Mm-hmm.
hardcore, whatever. It's got a lot of distortion on it. And I told him, I said, give me good distortion, but let's exactly like you said, let's have kind of a roundness to it.
Yeah.
Um, and so the entire record, everything from the heaviest guitars to the lightest, except for the acoustic. We have an acoustic guitar in there on a few songs, but every single thing was done with a Les Paul Jr. through what was that amp? PV 5250, something like that.
Could it be a
Um,
5150? That's the other big famous PV amp I know. 5250 though.
yeah, I think it was 6505. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was that. But yeah, the entire record is one guitar and one amp. We just switched up the knobs on the guitar a little bit and used
Mm-hmm.
some pedals.
Dude, well, I thought the phenomenal results. Your engineer did a fantastic job. I think I have some guitar weeds kind of people who listen to this. This is all stuff I am find very interesting. Like just this past month, I said it on the show, so I felt a need to want to do it. So I got like easy drum. I had gotten Easy Drummer 2 from my birthday. My fiance got it for me, and then like Easy Mix, and just like, all right, I got my audio interface, I'm gonna get some stuff down. So like I really appreciate like the work that goes into like getting guitars and good sounds when you're recording. So a plus. Yeah, I think you guys really accomplished something, and you guys had a record deal for this release. Yeah.
Yeah, we found a label who would put it out for us. It was great. I mean, and and like when I say that our band started in 2019 when the record came out, I mean, I'm not kidding. If you didn't live in Richmond and were part of, the college rock scene or whatever, you didn't know us. We didn't play anywhere else. We didn't tour. No one online knew about our band. Um, and so I just kind of, like I was saying before, I just kind of treated it like a job interview. And I sent out, emails with the record to a bunch of people. And I thought, well, this record's done. It's mastered. I paid for everything, or, the band paid for everything. Who doesn't want to just put out a record for free where they have to do literally no work? Turns out most people still don't want to put out your record for free if they haven't, if you have absolutely no following.
Sure.
But David over in the UK, he was one of the guys that replied and said, "Hey, it's great. Let's do this." So that's how Engineer came about, and yeah, he's been awesome, and he pretty much works alone. So it's kind of amazing all the stuff that he can get done.
Oh, totally. I love people like that. Like I relate to what you're saying when you say you feel like your band didn't start until last October. I feel that way. I've been doing this podcast for 4 years, but I feel like the beginning, a lot of it was me. Uh, like maybe the first 50 episodes were like me teaching myself how to podcast, as far as like the technical side and the talking and listening part of it. But I feel like only in the like last couple years, I feel like I've really like I've it, found my voice is a kind of a cliche thing to say, but I feel like I feel like I'm not. I feel like I've got a confidence in what I'm doing, and now I'm doing it, and that's really exciting. So I relate to what you're saying. Were you guys able to tour on this album at all before the pandemic hit?
um, well, yes and no, basically. Um, we had a few shows set up for June, as in, I think we were supposed to go out last week. We had, weekenders planned and we had done all this stuff to prepare, like mostly down south. But obviously that didn't happen. We did go to India though and played some festivals in India. So that was kind of absurd. But so
Oh, how
yes, we
cool!
did tour a little bit.
That's so cool. I've been to India. Well, I'm so. What was that experience like?
This is what have you ever seen NoFX Backstage Passport?
Yes, I have.
Think about think about all the shit that goes wrong there in foreign countries, except we weren't NoFX, so we weren't playing to like 4,000 kids every night.
Uh huh.
Um, in some ways it was a disaster, but man, I wouldn't take it back. Like kids over there, they don't have rock music at all. So like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that anyone comes to their country, they just can't even believe it. Um, and some kids, some places we went, we played four different colleges, like four different festivals essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So we were taking domestic flights, throughout the country.
Yeah.
And some places didn't care, but most places did. And the kids just like to see live music because it's not really common over there.
No, I do. I remember reading about, and this is going to be an obscure deep cut. Do you remember the hairband Firehouse?
The hair band,
Yeah, they were a big hairband through.
like a hair metal band.
Yeah, a hair metal band, but they were big in the not in the 80s, but the 90s. They actually beat Nirvana for like the best hard rock new hard rock artist in like 1991. But they were like apparently the first Western rock band to do a show in Indonesia. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so that I'm very that's this is stuff I'm very interested in. I have three more continents I have to do stand up on before I will have done them all. Uh,
Oh, dude, that's sick.
yeah, man, I got a plan for Antarctica. I don't know how I'm going to do Australia and Africa yet, but I got a plan for Antarctica. If I talked to a comedian named Tom Rhodes. I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff, but he's one of my favorite comics of all time, and he's known for performing internationally. So if we ever get the gig in Antarctica, I'm I'm gonna open. but
Oh man, that'd be
but
crazy.
yeah, dude. But like yeah, because I hear like when. And I'm sure if you've listened, I talk to bands about playing in Japan like every chance I get. Like just hearing about to me it's like it kind of reinforces that kind of cheesy sentiment that wherever you go in the world people aren't that different, like you might hear on like Parts Unknown or a travel show or something like that. But to like this actually happened to me when I was in India, to like have some guy come up to me and say, I love your Blink-182 shirt. That band is great. And I'm like, oh, they have a new album. Oh, they do. Like to be able to have moments like that, I find I is really powerful to me.
Yeah, dude, you're totally right. I mean, at one point, we played a show at one of the festivals, and the organizers came to our, hotel room after, and they were like, "Hey, we want you guys to judge the student-run Battle of the Bands tomorrow." And we were like, "Ah, that sounds like a miserable day in the sun."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we went. The bands were all amazing, but there were like eight kids who walked up to the front when this one band played, and they just started like moshing and headbanging. They all had like Metallica shirts on and like Slayer shirts on, and I was like, them, there they are, they're still here. Like even out here, they're here. So naturally, we went up to them after the competition and said, "Hey, come back to our hotel room tonight. Like let's geek out about music and chat and drink and whatnot."
Exactly. I imagine you introduced them to the Menzingers.
Did I? Maybe. I think we definitely played like a series of kind of throwback YouTube, like 90s rock songs. Menzingers, you basically can't be my friend without hearing about the Menzingers,
Hmm.
pretty much all the time. So I'm sure we did. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first heard them, and not to sound like too much of a hipster, but I first heard of them because I was going to see Anti-Flag at the Bell House, and they were the openers, and they just kind of really made an impact on me. I think this was before On the Impossible Past came out, so they weren't even like the Menzingers that we know now. I think this was the first song of theirs I heard was I Was Born, and I was like, this is punk, but it doesn't sound like punk I've heard before, but I like it and I'm intrigued. Give me more, please.
Oh, dude, that song is so sick. And I mean, yeah, I think I was probably the same thing. My buddy Adam, he's always kind of on the cutting edge with stuff like that. But he said, "Hey, listen to this new album that came out. It was Chamberlain Waits."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I listened to it and I was like, the cover isn't the cover like a throwback to a Clash cover or something?
I don't know. I'm
It's
gonna look
supposed
that up while
to
you talk.
directly like link to some other band that they like. Anyway, so I noticed that and I was like, oh, I've seen this before, listened to it, loved it. And then, of course, when Impossible Past came out, it kind of changed everything for me. I mean, I think that's probably my favorite record ever made.
Oh yeah, that record is when you think about when you like you hear like I don't know, maybe our dads talk about like Led Zeppelin 4 and like the some of like the greatest like seminal rock albums of all time for like the 2010s. That's what On the Impossible Past was. That album just has like so many layers of like depth when it comes to not only what's going on musically but what's going on lyrically, and the amount of like trying to like trace down like I imagine there's just tons of Menzinger fans with like a wall of their bedroom like chasing down like the girl in the blue dress and like all of these references in the lyrics.
Dude, yeah, I mean, my buddy, shout out to Mark and his band Alarm, um, doing great things with kind of like post-hardcore and hardcore music down at the beach. But I'm lucky that I have like three other best friends who all of our favorite band is the Menzingers. Like, so we
Uh-huh.
just talk about them constantly. But he ordered some flag from them from their merch shop, and it's got just kind of like a mural of all these symbols that direct to all their songs. It's so cool. Um, so yeah, like I think they put something out like that if you want to buy it from them.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna find that. I also, I don't. I'm sure you've probably heard "America, You're Freaking Me Out" Part Two. I That really hit me hard. That song, the new version of that song.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hard to focus on music. I think lately, I have during this, COVID quarantine, I have been able to write a lot. So that's kind of how, writing the second record and everything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I just think it's great to see bands kind of writing songs and creating merch. I mean, right now we have a merch sale going on. I don't know when does this come out? Is this
Uh,
how soon do you upload these?
I could probably if not next week, the week after that is when I'll upload this.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so we might still be doing it, but we're doing a shirt sale, a merch sale where 100% of the profits go to the bail fund. And so it's like every single band that I know is doing something. And I mean, we're not a big band. We're not going to sell, 1,000 shirts or something, but
Hmm.
I do appreciate, I do appreciate that it's kind of like on everyone's mind so much right now because eventually it won't be. And so
Hmm.
and that's not me being cynical. That's just, I think, me um, acknowledging that reality and knowing that this is the time to act to make an impact so we don't have to so it can just be something constant that is a good change in our lives.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I've been thinking about a lot is how to continue the progress with this very specific issue, Black Lives Matter, once once the issue with the guy who killed George Floyd like dies down. Like how do we got to keep pushing for got to keep pushing for meaningful change, got to keep staying active politically being informed, like all of that stuff is really important. And I love it when bands like realize that there's, there's kind of a responsibility to if the same way I kind of think, if you have a platform, if you have any kind of platform, or at least you kind of got to make sure you're doing something positive with it. If that's just me though.
Yeah, and I mean that's why, I've kind of taken to the petition and donation side of things, because I do think that really is what's going to lead to structural change. A lot of people are getting, very heated online and stuff like that, and I think it's interesting to see that, and it kind of keeps it fresh in everyone's minds. But I just want to try to do something that I feel like is going to be there, after the next Facebook post or whatever, and not just hot for today,
Exactly. I'm donating. I'm donating where and when I can. When I find organizations, my guitarist has been to like 7 protests in New York City. So like, it's an important time and an important issue. So I saw that you guys are doing that. I will post something about this before I post the episode, so that we are getting some eyes on it. Um, I guess what I want to, a couple other things I'd love to discuss. I would love to geek out on Hello Exile, because I don't know, it's maybe not cool to say, but that might be my favorite album of theirs. Like, just something about it. I love On the Impossible Past, but like the first time I heard Anna, I was like, I don't know an Anna, but I miss Anna.
Oh, dude, and I don't know, they're so good at writing, um, like not breakup songs, but also not like straight love songs. They're good at writing songs where like the love is still there, but it's not there at the current moment, It's not
I
a breakup, but it's like both parties want to be together, but they can't for some sort of tertiary reason. And yeah, that song is fantastic.
I love that song. You think, I think you hit the nail perfectly on the kind of like After the Party. To me is another song like that, where and especially because I thought the music video really like got me the first time I saw it. Like, two people that are clearly together, but it's not all sunshine and roses, like, which is, well, I found, like, as you get older, like what real relationships are like is, there's work and give and take on both sides to make it functional.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so, especially for Greg. I don't know kind of what Tom's situation is, but his writing, as far as like detail as a form of addressing a larger issue, is like something that's so important to me. Like I take so much from his songwriting, as far as noticing the little things and writing about that, rather
Mm-hmm.
than just, coming straight out with it. And After the Party is that exact song. I think he's mentioned that, where, he wants to, and Casey is another good one.
Mm-hmm.
There's something going on with this couple, but he's not just going to flat out say it. He's going to talk about, you know, doing the dishes or whatever, and riding a bus back to Philly and all that, and putting you in moments that you can see yourself in, rather than just kind of addressing something that's ambiguous, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's enough. It's like a fine line between like kind of whimsical, like kind of like poetic lyrics, and you that are open to interpretation, and more explicit and direct. Like Greg's writing, I feel is like very direct and to the point, and that's why I like that the both of them are in the band, because it gives you a nice blend of those two styles. But there's a lot to be inferred. There's like breadcrumbs.
Dude, breadcrumbs is a perfect way to put it. And I mean, I've talked to Tom a ton of times, and I always bring up the fact that we did a shot of Jameson together at one of their shows in like 2012. I was like, dude,
Nice.
I'm buying you a shot. This is, I don't know, maybe 50 people showed up to their Richmond show. It was
Uh-huh.
great. But I'm always like geeking out with him, trying to like talk to him. But Greg is never around, man.
Yeah,
It's so frustrating.
I know I have tried to like find anything for him on the internet, and I can't find anything.
yeah, I tell Tom every time I see him, I'm like, dude, this album is great. Freedom Bridge is one of my favorite songs you guys ever did, and you wrote that. I love Boy Blue. That's another one of your songs. And now, I mean, now we're getting into the Menzingers weeds, but I would just love to have a conversation with Greg about some of his songs too, because that's a whole nother side of the band that, you know, I mean, he writes so many of their big songs. So I would just love to be able to sit down with him and man, hopefully you can one day. That would be awesome.
I hope so. Maybe I can put out a call. Maybe I don't know if you can help mobilize any all the Sleeve fans, but if anyone can get a hold of Greg from the Menzingers, give him my info.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it out there. I mean, the thing about Tom is he's always watching all the bands.
Yeah.
Like every time I go to a Menzinger show, he's sitting there in the crowd watching the opening band, which is so fucking cool.
Oh, absolutely. I
You know,
love that.
they're a big band. They're like the biggest band on Epitaph. They have a guarantee now, you know, after the party was huge for them. And he still sits there and watches, you know, whatever the sidekicks every single night.
Oh, the sidekicks are great. I saw them open for Motion City soundtrack recently and love them. That might have been the last concert I went to before quarantine hit. Second to last. That's I that speaks a lot to. I mean, I know Tom's a great guy from talking to him, but that speaks a lot. The same way, like if I'm at a comedy club, like there's always comics that'll like go out and like smoke and chat on the sidewalk. But I always try to make a point to like stay in the back and like watch the show, or if I don't have to go somewhere else, to stay for the whole show because I think it's a I think that's an important thing to do. It's a supportive thing to do. That I'm glad to hear that Tom watches the opening band.
Yeah, I mean, at least I see him there every time. I don't think I've not to say the other guys aren't doing their part or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they need to do that. I'm just saying it's really cool that I always see Tom doing that because I've talked to him so many times
Uh-huh.
and I get nervous every time.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's yeah, that's super cool. I hope you guys get to open for them at some point when this is over because I think that bill would be amazing.
Well, thank you so much, man. I mean, dude, that would be like a dream come true for us. Hey, Tom, you know, Greg, whatever, guys, if you're out there, or you know, Epitaph, if you're out there, hit us up. We'll open your Richmond show. Um, that would be great.
Yeah, dude. What are your plans for the second record? You said you've been working on some stuff during the quarantine.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been able to rehearse, you know, together as a group. The plans are just write it. I have probably, I'm looking at my board right now, my little dry erase board where I have three columns. I've got for sure songs. I've got, if we work on these are definitely for sure songs. And then I've got my kind of like little ideas that could one day become a song. And I think I've got
Mm-hmm.
10 now in my for sure. So just, I mean, write it the exact same way we did last time. And hopefully, I would like to be in the studio by fall of this year.
Awesome, man. Well,
Yeah. Is that what you meant by that question?
that's exactly what I meant. That's awesome, man. So we could have there could be another sleeve release in the not too distant future. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been able to tour, you know, or play out of town or anything, but I'm starting to realize more and more, especially like in 2020, man, maybe I should just be writing and not touring. People can find our shit online, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds kind of you know, kind of cynical to say, and I think, you know, we do need to play and people make money playing and people like seeing other bands, but our audience online is growing at such a faster rate from what we're doing online than from what we ever did playing shows, you know?
I do. That's something I wrestled with also when it came as far as like making sure because I used to do like three sets a night in New York City, and compare that to like having this podcast where I can measure like okay this is how many people I'm reaching and this is where they are. So it's I understand kind of what you're saying is like there's that weird there's that kind of odd balance, because I think it is absolutely important to play live and to play live well, because that's an important skill that you need to have if you're a rock band, I think. But that does seem like, but it does seem like people find you on the internet now, and then they come to the show. Whereas I think before it was a little bit different. But I'll tell you, man, you know somebody in New York City. So you guys, if you guys come to New York City, well, my guitarist is much more connected than I am. So there'll be stages again eventually. So I think there's some shows that we're on in the near future when this is all over.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Listen, I love playing shows. Definitely, our plan is to come up there, and I appreciate that, and play what we can, because now, I mean, that's really the only way to make money. And I'm sure as a comedian too, you have to kind of hone the creative process in front of crowds, because you have to get the response to know if it's good, right? Am I correct in that?
You are correct. You do not know if the joke is funny until you say it in front of people on stage, because in the correct context, that is what stand-up is. Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, my only thing is, once shows start happening again, there's going to be a ton of bands who make their living that have to get out right away. So at the very least, we're going to be seeing a lot of really great shows every night.
Oh, absolutely, man. And I'm really looking forward to that time. And I really appreciate it, again, that you reached out and sent me the record, because I really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed this conversation, getting to like geek out about there's like maybe 5 people I can talk to about the Menzingers, and now I have 6.
Yeah. Maybe we should title this The Menzingers so it gets more hits. Hey guys. Oh, sorry, it's just two dudes talking about them.
Well, I'll definitely be like adding them on a couple channels. So before we get out here, where can people find Sleave? Where are you guys online?
We are, well, so when we say sleeve, it's sleeve, Sleave. That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of the big caveat we have to throw out there, every time we're kind of promoting the band. But pretty much we're everywhere Sleeve Band. So Sleeve Band Instagram, Sleeve Band Facebook. Our website is sleeveband.com. And then, you can find us on Spotify and, streaming sites and Bandcamp and all that. So pretty much just type in Sleeve Band and hopefully we'll come up. YouTube, I guess, too.
Awesome, man. And I'll have all the you can send me any links you guys got, and I'll put it in the description, so people can check you guys out. So dude, this has been great, Charles. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, man, I love it. Just keep me posted on the episode, and we'll be posting it out too. And I look forward to more punk guys that you have on. I will be listening.
Absolutely. I've got something brewing that I'm excited about. So stay tuned, and thank you again for listening to the show. It means a lot to me, dude.
Yeah, dude. And then thanks for listening to the record, and I hope you have a great night, man.
You as well. Thank you so much, man. Have a good one. Okay, folks, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, you should check out Sleeve's record, Don't Expect Anything, available wherever you get your music. Again, Sleeve is Sleave. And that was my conversation with their vocalist and guitarist, Charlie Bowen. If you enjoyed that conversation and also enjoy earnest, heartfelt, punk-influenced rock and roll music, you should definitely check out his band. And I appreciate that you guys were here. If you enjoyed this and think you know a friend who might enjoy this podcast as well, I have over 160 episodes with a lot of different, very cool, groovy people. And we're available on the big 3, obviously, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. If you want to get a free month of Stitcher Premium, you can do so with the promo code AWESOME when you go to Stitcher.com/premium. Sign up with the promo code AWESOME in all caps, and that'll get you a free month off of your Stitcher Premium subscription. with that subscription, you can get hundreds of hours of comedy albums, ad-free archives, a lot of early access to a great amount of special of really excellent original content that is being produced. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Comic Will Carry on Twitter. I'm Will Carry23 on Instagram, and you can follow at Between Awesome and Disaster on Instagram as well for photos and fun podcast related things. I also want to give a shout out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Maribeth Mooney. Thank you so much for your support. I sincerely appreciate it. And you can check patreon.com/awesomedisaster for the exclusive members only content that I produce over there. You can also get access to my solo quarantine EP that I recorded under the name Death of Sincerity months before anyone else gets to hear it. So thank you guys for checking that out. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. And I will see you next time between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everybody.